Hey, what's up everyone? It's time to start building the base for my diesel servicing diorama. So I'm back here in SketchUp to design the base of my diorama, and as you can see, it's really nothing fancy. It's just a box frame with 3 braces inside of it just for some support so it doesn't warp over time. And the reason I did this in SketchUp first is, one, I do this for all my woodworking projects. I try to recreate it in 3D before I actually cut any wood. That way I can take exact measurements, I can play with dimensions, I can explore different options. And two, for this particular project, is I wanted to explore some basic topography options as well. So some of these layers of material represent different layers of topography. You know, the asphalt for the parking lot, obviously the structure is there for placement and things like that. So that's why I like using this program before I go ahead and actually like cut any wood in real life or place things onto things. So for now, I'm just going to concentrate on just creating the base of this thing. And so that will be the concentration for the rest of this video. So the material I'll be using for this project is just some select pine 1x2s, and I had some 1/4-inch plywood laying around from a previous project that I'll use for the top of the base. And I made sure I picked out the straightest boards that I could find at the home center. However, I always let it sit for about a week before I cut anything. The reason being is there is a chance when you bring it from one environment to another that it could warp on you. And so I let it sit for about a week, and then I check the boards, make sure they're straight, and then I'll cut them after that. I always also pick up one more than I actually need, just in case if one of the boards does warp, I have that spare. Okay, so here's everything I'm going to be using to build this frame. This is a simple box frame construction, nothing fancy. Looks like there's a lot here, but I always use this stuff to make sure I'm as accurate as I can be. I'm using some right angle clamps. These are super cheap. These ones are made by Bessie. There's several different brands of this style. You can pick them up at the hardware store. Small square, just to make sure my angles are square as I'm clamping them up. I don't know if I'll use this clamp. I always have clamps laying around. We'll see if I use it. I probably will. And then just a straight edge to make sure that these edges are flush as I'm clamping this up. This is actually one of the inside braces, so I'll be installing that at the end. Drill and driver to drive the screws. And for the screws, I'll be using these Spax general purpose construction screws. These are number 8s. They're 1.5 inch long. The general rule that I use for attaching wood to other pieces of wood in projects like this is that I want to make sure the screw goes into this piece. I'll be attaching this piece to this one. I want to make sure the screw goes into here at least the thickness of this piece here. So this is 3/4 of an inch. I want to make sure the screw goes into this one at least 3/4 of the inch. I feel that I'm confident that that will hold. I'll be driving 2 screws on each end just in case, because I kind of over-engineer things. But that's a general rule that I use when figuring out what length of screw I'm going to be using for a project. So with all of that, let's get started and let's build this thing. As you can see, the box frame construction is complete. I do have it raised up on some small 2x4s at the moment. That's because when I attach the plywood to the top, I want to be able to clamp it down so that it's not going to move on me once I drill the first hole, or any of the holes really. And so this is just some extra plywood I had left over from the previous project. It's about 3/16 of an inch in thickness. Now when I cut this, it did come out a little bit long on this side over here, which is fine. I'm going to trim that up. It's better than it being too short. And to trim that up, I'm just going to use a cordless router with a flush trim bit along the edge once I have it attached. Now you don't have to do that. You can just use a sanding block or some sanding paper and just sand it flush to the side. Anything over 1/16 of an inch, which is just about what this is, I don't like sanding that much, so I'll use one of these. I already have it, so why not use it? I'll be attaching it with some number 6 3/4 inch screws. This is plenty enough. I'm going to have it all around here. I want to make sure it's as flat as possible. Now the reason I did the 3 braces instead of 1 or just 2 is because this plywood's a little bit, not warped I'd say, but it's a little bit bowed, and so I want to make sure this is a nice flat surface. So I have those extra braces to be able to screw things down. It doesn't add a lot of extra weight. I think this whole thing weighs about 6 pounds, which is of course not that much. So the other thing I need to make sure is that I change my bit to be a number 6 bit. That way I'm not drilling a hole that's too large for the screw, otherwise it just won't attach. So the next step is to drill these holes, put in the screws, and then trim it up. Okay, so the plywood is attached and all trimmed up. Next step is to apply some polyurethane to the top. This is just some cheap stuff I got at the hardware store. Nothing fancy, just has to be able to seal it. Now I will be using water-based scenery techniques on this, and this is going to help prevent any warping that may occur if the water reaches the plywood. So I will be doing this outside because it's really stinky and I don't want my basement smelling like this for weeks. So I'm going to go out and do that. We'll come back and go on to the next step. Now that the polyurethane is all dry, the base of this diorama is basically complete. And so I'll have a nice canvas to work off of here. Pretty happy with it. And so some of the next installments will include taking the measurements from my workbench and transferring them over to here so I can start laying stuff out, and then adding some basic topography. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. And as always, thanks for watching. Take care. And we'll see you next time.